and courage. It's actually not lack of fear. It's doing what you know needs to be done, even though you're afraid.
Okay, sorry, the camera's off.
Hmm?
The camera's off. I mean, not off, it's just right. And it's blurry. I can see you now, but you're blurry.
Yeah.
Is that better?
No, it's too
So-
weird.
It's blurry, but I don't know why.
So I've got a story about some folks, and they included a couple of grandparents and a grandchild. And they're gonna hike up this trail to Timpanogos Cave near Provo. And it's a rather strenuous hike, short but steep. So the first quarter, the hike went pretty quick. The second half went fairly quick. By the time we got to the halfway point, Mary started to become discouraged. So they slowed down to give her, let her know, hey, you're with us. We're gonna slow down. We're gonna let you walk with us. And just, then it seemed like everything went wrong. The wind came up from the canyon and blew dust up in the air, and they couldn't even see the trail hardly. And if that wasn't bad enough, they run across a signpost that said rattlesnake habitat. Stay on the trail, stay safe. And then from then on, Mary, the granddaughter, was like walking, right down the middle of the trail and looking side to side, expecting a snake to jump out at her at any time. They completed 3/4 of the way to the cave, but then they had the steepest part left to climb. Tired and scared and doubting her abilities, Mary sat down and said, I'm done. I can't do this. I can't go any farther. So the whole family there and friends, they sat down with her and talked about what they should do. And they decided they would make a plan. They would make a plan that went like this. Mary, what if you just walk 100 steps? You can do that. Oh, yeah. Okay, so she walks 100 steps, and they do things to kind of like make her feel good about this too. Like, look at, oh, isn't that a beautiful flower? Look at this gorgeous view. Wait, let's not talk about how steep it is getting up here, but man, isn't that a great view? And they sang songs, and 100 steps wasn't that bad, and the next 100 steps wasn't so bad, and the next after that, and pretty soon Mary and all of them were up there at the top, at the mouth of the cave, looking out over the canyon. Then Mary gave out a sigh of relief and a slight smile. Lao Tzu said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Have you ever been afraid and discouraged as you face a challenge that seemed far beyond your ability? Have you ever wanted to give up? Mary had the support of her friends and grandparents. She had a plan to follow. Who do you have that buoys you up when you're discouraged or when you're facing something difficult? What is your plan? From the movie Princess Bride, if any of you have seen it, Wesley is leaving the farm so he can make some money. He and Buttercup want to get married, and he's got to go off and earn a fortune first so they can do this. And Wesley says, hear this now, I will always come for you. Buttercup replies, how can you be so sure? Know this is true love. Do you think this happens every day? So Wesley's determination was so strong that he beat a world-class swordsmanship, strangled a giant, outsmarted a midget, and if that wasn't enough, he had to wade through the fire swamps, endure death-threatening torture, brought back to life by a miracle, and then broke into the king's castle. All of this just so he could carry his true love off into the sunset. My advice to you is that if you're challenged if the world is threatening to take something away from you, which is precious to you, don't give up, don't give in. Take what is yours. From the movie Tintin, Captain Haddock. By the way, in the movie, Captain Haddock was played by Circus, was his first name, the guy that did Gollum. He did a great job with that captain. He was a drunken South, the captain was alcoholic. Anyways, he did a good job. But Captain Haddock and Tintin's a reporter reporting this thing, and they get caught up in this chase trying to find this treasure, and they had the map, and they didn't have the map, and finally the map was taken by the villain. Captain Haddock says, "We'll show them, won't we, Tintin? All right, now what's the plan?" "There is no plan," Tintin replied. Of course there's a plan. You've always got a plan. What's the plan?" "Not this time. Sacrament has the scrolls, the treasure map. They'll lead him to the treasure. They could be anywhere in the world. We'll never find him again. It's over." Captain Haddock said, "I thought you were an optimist." "Well, you thought wrong. I'm a realist. That's just another word for quitter. You can call me what you like. Don't you get it? We have failed." Then Captain Haddock said this: "Failed? There are plenty of others who are willing to call you a failure, a fool, a loser, a hopeless louse. Don't you ever say it of yourself. If you care about something, you fight for it. You come up against a wall, you push through it. There's something you need to know, Tintin. You can never let defeat get you down." There was a blind man. In an effort to support himself, he sat day in and day out at the edge of a busy sidewalk in one of our large cities. He had pencils and a felt hat, and he had a cup, hopefully for paying people to put money in, and he extended his hand like this. It was kind of pitiful, very simple, point to the point. And if they didn't get it, he had a placard around his neck that said, "I am blind." Well, most people didn't stop to take pencils or to give him money, because they had their own problems. They were too busy, occupied with their own difficulties. Then one spring morning, a man came by and he looked at the blind man there. And he took out a felt pen and he added some words to his placard that was around his neck. It no longer said, "I am blind." The message now read, "It is springtime and I am blind." Woo! And what do you think happened? People started dropping coins in the cup. Pretty soon this cup was full of coins. They just needed a sense of perspective. Sandy Greenberg recalls seeing a blind man when he was young, in his childhood. He stumbled over this blind man, actually. He was sitting cross-legged at the side of the sidewalk. He was, let's see here, lanky, hunched over, in soiled clothes, torn clothes, wearing oversized disintegrating shoes, holding a metal cup. Unfocused eyes with white with little specks in them, and his teeth were crooked and decayed. Oh my goodness, what a poor man. Years later, in a bitterly cold February 1961, Sandy Greenberg lay in a hospital bed. He is blind. Although that morning he became blind because of an incurable disease. He was a junior at Columbia University, and he had to quit. The world was just starting to open up for him. He was looking towards graduating and school after that, and law school and politics and all these wonderful things, plans he had. Now, instead of those plans for a bright future, Sandy viewed a world that was defined instead by a cane or a guide dog, menial work, and a cautious path through life. That first night, after being blind, in his restless sleep, more like nightmares, which they were punctuated by a reoccurring image of that blind man that he saw in the marketplace a dozen years before. He was laughing at Sandy, his head and chest thrown back, facing the sky. Dr. Sugar's words, "Well, son, you're going to be blind tomorrow," repeated themselves over and over. But that's not how this story ends. When Sandy had become blind, it wasn't the reality of the darkness that was heartbreaking. It was that when he did have his eyesight, he didn't use it. He didn't really stop and look at all the beautiful things around him. Suddenly it was too late. And all the things that he ignored, the smile of his girlfriend, the sunset, what else? Everything. All the things that the world is full of were gone. You could never see them again. You could never remember them again. Look at them. You needed to see things so he could remember all the things that he could no longer see. Well, Sandy was explaining this to his friend, Art. When he had talked himself out, Art, uncharacteristic of him, just went silent for a minute or so. Then finally he said, I think all of us squander away our lives. And we don't even know we're doing it. This is a story about courage and determination in the face of unseemingly unsurmountable difficulties and challenges. A story about being blessed with the support of friends and loved ones. And it is about his dream, a dream that he clung to at all costs. Some would say that Sandy's misfortune was simply there to remind everyone that life isn't fair, that good fortune is illusionary, and so on and so forth. But that's not what he felt. There was something in him which tenaciously resisted his fate. Herman has said, God does not send despair in order to kill us. He sends it in order to wake us up to a new life. Sandy's awakening, though, was brutally hard. The thing that pushed him forward was that he still harbored a stubborn feeling of being unfulfilled. There was all those things he wanted to learn and to know, like pulling of the proverbial thread on the sweater. You pull it and it just keeps on going and unwinding. There was always something more that Sandy wanted to learn. Sandy explained it to his friend Art when he had talked himself out. Then with the enthusiasm that was characteristic of Art, he said, "You know what you need to do, Sandy? Come back with me to Columbia. Let's conquer Columbia." And they did. They went back. They returned to Columbia, and Sandy graduated, notwithstanding his handicap of being blind. And then he moved up the scholastic ladder, went through law school, and became a successful businessman. When Art would arrive at Sandy's apartment to read the textbooks to him, Sandy would say, "Who's there?" And Art would say, "Darkness has come to read to you," because everything was dark. So this is voice coming into a room. To a blind person, it's like darkness is coming to them. And Sandy would reply, "Can you guess? Hello, darkness."
My old friend.
My old friend. Guess whose name that is? It's Art Garfunkel. Yeah. Was his name. Oh, right. And so that's where that one line came from the book and from the song. Anyway, so now another movie. I'm just quoting movies today. This is from Prince of Persia. Prince Tamina says, "It's gone. Protect the dagger, no matter what the consequences. That was my secret calling. That was my destiny." Prince Dustin replied, "We make our own destiny, Princess. We will get the dagger back." And they did get it back. We make our own destiny. It's not a thing imposed upon us unless we give in to the flow of circumstances and let them wash us downstream. That is the difference between fate and destiny. What was it that gave Sandy the drive to choose his own destiny, to push? The push to fight for his dream against all odds, courage, and a very strong, stubborn streak. Sandy claimed, "I am not a blind man. I will not allow myself to be blind or to be thought of in that way. But how did Sandy come to this conclusion? How did this clear vision of himself emerge from the darkness? It all started with a well-meaning but ill-aimed counseling received from Miss Borlaug. With a name like that, can you imagine? She's probably stocky and stern, and she was stern. I don't know what she looked like, but she says to Sandy, "Do you consider yourself a blind man?" That seemed an odd question, but he answered, "Well, because, in a sense, I can't read, I can't get around by myself. I suppose you could say I'm blind, but I don't see how that makes any difference, whether I think I'm blind or not. It is important," she shot back, "particularly because it affects the way your attitude towards life. You are now entering into a whole new type of life, one totally different from the one you just came from." And why would she say that? What was going on? Well, she saw Sandy as a blind man who was in denial. That was her view of the matter, but it was not his. Sandy wasn't in denial, but determined to see the truth, no matter how camouflaged it seemed or how far from his reach. Now, Wallace Wattles, a New Thought writer from the 1920s, said this: "Every individual has a natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. There is no labor from which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances." In what ways do you feel blind or fall short of your expectations? Will you rise above them or fall beneath them? At Sandy's next meeting, Miss Borlaug, Borlaug there. She's single. I know a lot of you single, but she was always single. Probably a reason. Anyways, Miss Borlaug and he continued their argument. "That's precisely my point," she said. "You won't admit that you're blind. You do everything you can to avoid being a blind person." He says, "Well, I'm not a blind person," he tartly replied. He traveled that day home, and due to circumstance I won't get into, he ended up being by himself. He had to find his way back to the university by himself. He's blind. This is New York. He's got to get on the subway. He's got to, a lot of stuff that has to do. And he runs into a wall and cuts his forehead severely. There's blood running down his face, and he has many other scratches and bruises that he obtained that day by running around and trying to get home. So at one point, Sandy ran into a man, a rather big man. Boom! Just ran into him, and he goes, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm blind, and I didn't know you were there. I'm trying to find my way." And he says, the man says, "Well, no problem. People are always bumping into me. I'm rather large, kind of like a wall, and it's hard to get around me." Well, his name was Muhammad Ali. It turned out later, he found out later. But all right. Get Smart is opening up here. That's your ring, yes.
Right? We got to trigger rolling.
This sounds just like Get Smart's shoe, doesn't it?
Right?
Anyways, here's an incident in his adventure there that I found rather humorous. He's, he's blind and he's doing this so he doesn't get another big cut. And his hands come up against something rather soft. And he backed up and he says, "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I'm blind. Please forgive me." And the lady says, "Well, I've never heard that excuse before." Okay, so he's thumbing along, and Sandy thought again of the marketplace and the blind beggar that he had seen there with his mother. The entire scene repeated itself. And as Sandy became close to the beggar reached out his hand. And his mother grabbed Sandy and drew him back away from the blind man with his hand, you know, you look at it, it was a scabby hand. But he didn't pull Sandy out of reach of the blind man's eyes, which were looking up at him, eyes which were ruined, probably by some unlucky grenade, by the look of them. Awakening from his daydream, coming back to the current predicament, battered and lost, he cried out, "Am I becoming that man? Was that thrice blasted counselor right after all?" Then a ray of hope came into his mind. His grandmother and his parents forced their way across Europe, across the Atlantic. Nothing could stop them, neither poverty nor fear of the unknown future, neither disease or war. It was during wartime that they came across. They would not compromise their hopes or their dignity, whatever the price. And Sandy says, "Can I do at least as well as them?" Then he thought of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the great president. He had always been a model of one who, how one deals with their disability. You deal with it by saying to yourself, it doesn't exist. Act as if it doesn't exist and go on with your life. So Sandy thought about all these things and he squared his shoulders and he declared resolutely, and from then on, I am not a blind man. There's a lesson here. Do not look at your difficulties as events that define who you are, and let that conviction determine the meaning of your life. You don't have to settle for less than your dream. What is your dream? What is your purpose? Your purpose is to recognize the greatness within and deliver it. And your dream? That is entirely up to you. For Sandy, the possible reward was redemption. Redemption from blindness, I suppose, is what he means. Though he had been ripped from his previous life of potential and life's landscape at best to become a fading twilight, yet through the power of renewed hope, he found himself catapulted back into the light. Not the light of the eye, but an inner light, God's light, and also the light of his own making. We make our own destiny, and God delights in this, in the courage and determination through which this life of ours, a gift from him, is developed and eventually flourishes. The Lord said through Isaiah, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you." What do you think of when you hear the word arise? I think of you, the members of this church. I think of all the ways you are showing courage to face your difficulties. I also think of Mary and her plan to take one step at a time and to never give up. I think of Wesley, Captain Haddock, Prince Dustin. I think of Sandy and the redemption he found in seeking to rebuild his life, not as a blind man, but as a normal person who just happened to have impaired sight. Bless you. May your dreams come true. May you find the inner strength to stand up for what is yours and take it. Above all, realize every minute is it. It is the greatest of all gifts. Thank you. Now, we have a meditation